Today we're diving into a pretty intense political situation brewing in Meghalaya. And the accusation at the heart of it all, well, it's a bombshell, and it's aimed right at the very top, the Chief Minister's office.
Just let that sink in for a second. The Command Center for Corruption. We're not talking about a rogue official or a single shady deal here. The allegation is that the entire web of corruption is being orchestrated from the most powerful office in the state. It is an absolutely explosive claim, and it's the anchor for this entire story.
So let's break it down. Senior opposition leaders are on the record saying that the Chief Minister's office isn't just part of the problem, it's the source of the problem. And the implication of that, well, it's staggering, right? If the very top is compromised, what does that mean for every other level of government?
Okay, but you can't just throw an accusation that big out there without some kind of proof. It can't just be talk. And the opposition claims they have it, pointing to some very specific, very large-scale programs.
And this is where we get to the real heart of the standoff. It's become a high-stakes game of political chess. The opposition lays out their claim, and the government, well, they don't really offer a defense. Instead, they issue a dare.
So on one side, you have the opposition pointing to massive public programs, things you probably heard of, like the Jal Jeevan Mission for water and the Rural Employment Scheme MGNREGA. They're saying these initiatives are riddled with corruption, all directed by the CMO. But the government's response is fascinating. They don't get into a debate about the specifics. They just say, you think you have proof? Great. Go file a police report.
And that is the million-dollar question, isn't it? If the opposition is so certain, why not call the government's bluff? Why not just march into a police station with all this supposed evidence?
And this is where the two sides are on completely different planets. The Deputy Chief Minister's take is that the opposition is simply shying away because, well, they don't actually have any real proof. But the opposition's counterargument is really fundamental. They're asking, how can you possibly report corruption to a system that you believe is controlled by the very people you're trying to accuse?
You see, this whole back and forth, it isn't just political theater. It actually digs up a much deeper and frankly more troubling question. Can a system ever truly police itself, especially when the allegations are aimed squarely at those holding the reins of power?
To really get what's going on here, we need to talk about this idea called institutional independence. Now, it might sound a little academic, but the concept is actually super simple. It's the core principle that says bodies like the police force should be able to do their jobs without needing a nod of approval from politicians.
And this brings us right to the central dilemma, the ultimate conflict of interest. I mean, think about it. How can you expect a truly impartial investigation when the investigators ultimately answer to the very office they're supposed to be investigating?
And when you look at the chain of command, it's crystal clear. The Chief Minister's office, the political executive, has direct control over the state police force. It's that direct line of authority that raises all of these serious questions about impartiality and the potential for political influence.
So, if you feel like you can't trust the state agencies to be objective, what do? Where do you turn? Well, this is exactly why you so often hear calls for central agencies, like the CBI or the ED, to step in. The logic is pretty straightforward. They operate outside the state government's chain of command, which, in theory, gives them a much better shot at a genuinely impartial investigation.
So, if the politicians are locked in a stalemate and the state institutions are under a cloud of doubt, what's left? Well, there's one more powerful force in this equation: citizen-led action.
And the core idea here is both simple and incredibly powerful. When the system itself seems to be gridlocked, when nobody is budging, sustained and focused public pressure can be the one thing that breaks the logjam and actually forces some real change. So what does that actually look like? Well, you can think of it as a kind of playbook for citizens. We're talking about concrete steps, pushing for a court-monitored investigation to add a layer of oversight, supporting civil society groups who are on the ground compiling evidence, and using the power of social media to get central agencies to take notice on their own. And, maybe the most important piece of all, demanding guaranteed protection for the whistleblowers, the people brave enough to speak up in the first place. So when you step back and look at the whole picture, you realize this isn't just some political squabble in Meghalaya. It's so much bigger than that. What we're seeing is a fundamental test of institutional integrity. It's a test of whether the systems in place can actually hold power to account. And that leaves us with one last big question to think about. When ordinary citizens have to organize and fight just to get a credible investigation into serious allegations, what does that really say about the health of the very system that was designed to protect them in the first place?